G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. And there's a saying that when it's steamboat time, people invent steamboats all around the world, independently. When it's aeroplane time, people invent aeroplanes all around the world, independently. Well, guess what? Apparently it is now SunFoil time. Now I say that it's SunFoil time because last week one of my subscribers, Infinity Vision, capital I, capital V, one word, how you going mate? Infinity Vision told me to search a movie title, quote, Solar Assisted Pickup. 3 words, capital letter at the start of each one. So I took Infinity Vision's advice, and lo and behold I found a channel called Precise Bible, capital P, capital B, one word, and there's a movie there called Solar Assisted Pickup. And the story's pretty interesting. At Precise Bible, his name is Michael, has a solar assisted pickup, and it's a very, very exotic vehicle. It's a large, I suppose it's a V8 powered American pickup, or utility we'd call it in Australia, and 26 miles per US gallon was his baseline figure, driving 45 miles to work at 70 miles per hour. Okay? Now, 70 miles an hour for 45 miles is 38 minutes. Now, that's an interesting figure because a battery's resting charge state is dependent on the engine's average runtime. Alright, you have to run a car engine 45 minutes before the alternator finishes recharging the battery from any particular charge state, assuming it was a fully charged battery and you'd only taken one engine start out of it. So, my own figures are a 15-minute drive from here to town, and my average engine run time is 6.5 minutes. A figure which I established by writing down my engine stop and start times for a year. So, as a rule of thumb, if you can extend my practices to other people, you can say that their average engine run time is 43% of the longest run that they do per day. Cute, isn't it? So, if old mate Michael at Precise Bible's longest run is the 38 minutes to work and the 38 minutes coming home, then 43% of that gives him 16.4 minutes average engine run time. And coincidentally, here we have a chart showing the 45 minutes to reach 100% charge with an automotive alternator. And if we have a look down here, 16.5 minutes, that's 18, 17, 16.5 minutes. Now that figure there is 91%, so we're between 80 and 91%. So that is the resting discharge state of Michael at Precise Bible's V8 pickup, or utility as we would call it, in his unmodified state. Sorry to hit you with another piece of paper here and some more graphs and figures, but on the left hand side we have battery charge state in percent. Up the right hand side we have specific gravity, from water at the bottom right to 1.3 specific gravity sulfuric acid as goes into batteries, right? The green zone, the bottom end of the green zone at 85%, that's where Michael at Precise Bible's battery has been resting. And if he went out there in the morning ready to start up, he would have found his battery was resting at 12.8 volts, 85% charged. Now why is this interesting? It's interesting because Wharton's law of SunFoil effectiveness is that the battery's resting charge state is exactly proportional to the percent of the fuel burn being fed to the electrical system. So if he's between 85 and 90% charged, then he's between 15 and 7.5% of his fuel burn is going to be going into his battery. So my prediction is down here between 10 and 17% of Michael's fuel burn has been going to his battery in his unmodified vehicle. And this is where it gets interesting, because Michael at Precise Bible tried a Brown's gas producer, an electrolysis unit to crack water into hydrogen and hydrogen plus oxygen, and he fitted that to his car. And he drove that to work at 70 miles an hour. And guess what happened? Here's what happened. Old mate went from 26 miles to the gallon to 18 miles to the gallon. He lost 30% of his fuel efficiency by fitting a Brown's gas producer and feeding the Brown's gas into his inlet manifold. He thought that one cause of this phenomenon may well be that the oxygen sensor in the engine's inlet manifold was detecting the extra oxygen and simply squirting more fuel in there. But then, I don't know whether he did it with an inline meter or a clamp meter, but he measured what was coming out of the battery and going into his Brown's gas producer and discovered a 30 amp drain on the battery which the alternator was having to replenish. So 30 amps, 30% degrading of the fuel efficiency. 1 amp from the alternator equals 1% degradation of your fuel efficiency. Gets a bit scary when you realise some people have got 120 and 150 amp alternators. So I guess that's a spot reading rather than something that can be applied across the board. But it's a pretty good ballpark average. If your headlights are sucking 30 amps, it's knocking 30% off your fuel efficiency. So as you may expect, the first thing that at Precise Bible Michael did was he threw his HHO bubbler unit away, and he bought instead a scan gauge. And the scan gauge, which didn't stop him from driving at 70 miles an hour, but it meant that he was much more gentle in acquiring his 70 miles per hour, that took him from 26 miles to the gallon to 30 miles to the gallon. So that's given him a 15% improvement over the unmodified vehicle, purely by having some computerised feedback as to his inlet manifold vacuum and his fuel flow and his torque readings, so that he's able to drive more gently. And you can call that pretty much the limit of placebo effect, right? 15% placebo effect. And that amount of apparent fuel efficiency improvement, that is available to any scheme which proposes or propounds or pretends to improve your fuel efficiency. Whether it's putting sugar pills in the petrol tank, like the Fire Zone Firepower scammer who's doing $26 million worth of jail time, or whether it's the people who put windmills in the inlet manifold and try and pre-spin the air to make it burn the petrol more effectively. You can get 15% better fuel economy just by paying attention to how carefully you drive. Okay, so at that point, Michael at Precise Bible decides that if he's lost a heap of fuel efficiency by having the alternator working hard, it might be interesting to see what happens if he unloads the alternator by putting a solar panel on the car. So he put a 15 watt panel on. And with a 15 watt panel, he went from 30 miles to the gallon to 31 miles to the gallon. So then he put a 50 watt panel on instead, and that got him to 32 miles to the gallon. And at that point, where I would have been saying, look, measure how much current's coming out of your battery when the car's parked, multiply that figure by 24 to get how much current goes out of the battery to feed your static systems per day. Add 1% of the battery's rated storage capacity, because that's how much it loses to sulfation. Take the product of those two added figures, multiply that by 1.1, because if you take 10 amps out, you've got to put 11 amp hours back in. And that would come up with a figure in amp hours, which the battery requires feeding with every day. In amps, it requires a panel half the size of the number of amp hours that it needs per day, and that way 2 hours of a sunny day or 10 hours of an over grey, clouded, raining day will still put the battery to bed at sundown, fully fed, even if the car hasn't been driven for 5 days, while it's been sitting in a rainstorm for 5 days. The battery will be fully charged when you go to start it, because a SunFoil is designed for cloudy days when it's raining. No point having a solar system that only works on sunny days, in my opinion. All right. So I am guessing that Michael at Precise Bible, if he'd measured his car, he would have found he needed a 75 to 80 watt panel. What he did instead was he decided to go from a 100 amp hour battery to a 300 amp hour battery to fit a 6 kilowatt inverter to provide alternating current to his power tools, and he got two 90 watt solar panels for $500 for the pair. So he's got a 180 watt solar power station on wheels, and one of the things that the power station runs is the car's electrical system. And with the Mega Maxi Minimalist SunFoil, I call it a minimalist because he's done nothing to streamline it except stick it on the tonneau cover where it doesn't matter much. And Dave at Canberra with Dave's Act invented the minimalist SunFoil, where you just bolt a solar panel to the car and don't worry about the aerodynamics. So Dave has a minimalist one, and Michael at Precise Bible has a Mega Maxi Minimalist. He's now getting 34 miles to the gallon. So he's 13% better than the best scan tool driving could achieve. So here he is with his 180 watt solar power station on the back of his pickup, and he's getting 34 miles to the gallon, which is 13.33% better than the best that he could get with the scan tool. And it's precisely where Wharton's law of SunFoil effectiveness says it should be for a vehicle that has an average engine runtime of 16.5 minutes, because it drives 45 miles to go to work at 70 miles per hour. So I'm feeling particularly pleased that somebody who didn't know that I was out there has all by himself invented a SunFoil system which complies with my 4 years worth of research and theory. And Michael at Precise Bible started to do this in early 2010, whereas this is Thursday, January 22nd, 2009's Glen Innes Examiner, where they carried as straight news the fact that I'd put the Mark I SunFoil up on the roof on the 5th of December, and that the first 6 weeks worth of figures showed that it was definitely saving fuel and it was doing good things. June 18, 2009, they covered the Mark II SunFoil going onto my son's car. Again, as straight news. Although they really sort of can't help themselves playing it for laughs, you know, the self-confessed greenie mad scientist Chris Wharton, with a Gumtree La sign pointing at me head over a no entry sign. So they gave a few horrible subliminal messages, but you know, you get that in a small town. June 15, 2010, they carried an update. November 4, 2010, they carried yet another update when I fitted the Mark III onto the Subaru 1800 touring wagon. So, with Michael at Precise Bible inventing his own SunFoil about a year to a year and a half behind me, and coming up with figures that line up perfectly both sides of the Pacific, and with Dave's Act in Canberra, who's been inspired by my YouTube movies to take himself from 5.67 kilometres to the litre all the way up to 7.04 kilometres to the litre, with a dip back down to 6.93 kilometres to the litre with his most recent transmitted figures. And he blames that on a whole heap of mountainous driving at Tidbinbilla when he went to the nature reserve there. But even if he was to stabilise at 6.93 kilometres to the litre, it's still 22% better than his original baseline, and 16% better, 16.23% better than it was before he fitted his SunFoil. A SunFoil is an aerofoil, and in the game of aerofoils, victory does not always go to the big money in the government institutions. That was the Smithsonian Institution's trying at flying. It was the crackpot Wright brothers who taught the world to fly. And it's the crackpot warbles that's teaching you to sunfoil. Ciao.